Today, we're going to dissect the Sampoong Department Store disaster. Now, this is a tragedy that happened in Seoul, South Korea, and it has become one of the most powerful and, frankly, one of the most disturbing case studies in modern corporate negligence. Let's start with a number, 502. That's not just a statistic. That's 502 people, shoppers, employees, entire families who died on the afternoon of June 29, 1995. To this day, it's the largest peacetime disaster in South Korean history. And it happened in less than 20 seconds. Just think about that. An entire wing of a huge, busy, 5-story luxury department store? Well, it just vanished into the ground, trapping over 1,500 people inside.
So how on earth does that happen? How does a modern building just crumble? You see, this wasn't an earthquake or some other natural disaster. This was entirely man-made. In this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers of the investigation and show you exactly how a series of deliberate choices, all driven by greed, made this collapse completely inevitable. Okay, let's dive in.
So the story here doesn't actually begin with a big bang. It starts with a series of really loud, really clear warnings on the very day of the disaster. Warnings that were, tragically, just completely ignored. Just look at this timeline of the final hours. This is what's so incredible. In the morning, employees reported huge cracks on the 5th floor. By the afternoon, civil engineering experts were actually on site, and they told management point blank that a collapse was imminent. And yet, nothing. Hours went by and no evacuation was ever ordered.
And this is really the heart of it all. Why no evacuation? Because they were afraid of losing a day's revenue. The store was packed with people, but the owner, a man named Lee Jun, and his executives, their priority wasn't human life, it was money. In fact, they held a meeting about it, decided against closing the store, and then they themselves left the building just before it fell.
So, while the rubble was still smoking and rescue crews were desperately trying to find survivors, investigators had this massive task ahead of them. What caused this? So let's move into the investigation and see how this all starts to build.
You know, right away, theories were flying. A gas explosion seemed plausible. Maybe even a terrorist attack from North Korea. That was a real fear at the time. But the evidence just didn't add up. See, the building collapsed straight down, almost neatly into its own basement. A big explosion would have blown debris outwards, and that just didn't happen. So investigators quickly realized this wasn't some sudden, one-off event. They found a trigger, something that had essentially set a time bomb ticking 2 years earlier. And unbelievably, it had to do with 3 huge, super heavy air conditioning units sitting on the roof.
And this is how it happened. To save a little bit of money on a crane, these massive 15-ton units were just dragged across the roof on rollers. That alone created huge cracks in the roof slab. Then, for the next 2 years, every time the AC kicked on, the vibrations just worked their way deeper and deeper into those cracks, especially around one critical support column, known as 5E.
But wait a minute. Moving some AC units, even badly, shouldn't cause an entire 5-story building to collapse, right? I mean, a properly built structure should have been able to handle that. Well, as investigators dug deeper, they found the answer was in the building's very bones. You see, the building used something called flat slab construction. As you can kind of see here, there are no big support beams. The floors just rest directly on top of the columns. Now, this can be an efficient design, but it has a massive weakness. If those columns are too weak or too thin, they can literally punch right through the floor slab above them, causing everything to pancake downwards in a chain reaction. And this is exactly where the rot started. The original plans called for columns that were 80 centimeters wide, with 16 steel rebar rods inside for strength. But to create more open retail space, the owner ordered them built at just 60 centimeters wide, with only 8 rebar rods. The result? The columns had less than half the strength they needed before the doors even opened. Oh, but it gets so much worse. Some support columns were literally chopped into to make room for escalators. The building was originally designed to be a 4-story apartment complex, but they added a heavy 5th floor mid-construction for restaurants, complete with thick, heavy concrete floors for underfloor heating. And to top it all off, they used cheap, substandard concrete. It wasn't one single mistake. It was a cascade of terrible, deliberate decisions.
So you see, these fatal flaws, they weren't accidents. They weren't just simple oversights. Every single one was a conscious choice, and they all trace back to the owner, Lee Jun, and his relentless, single-minded pursuit of profit over safety.
This timeline here basically lays out the entire blueprint for the disaster. Lee Jun changes the whole purpose of the building after construction was already underway. Now, the original professional contractor refused to make these dangerous changes, telling him it was unsafe. So what did Lee Jun do? He fired them, and he had his own in-house construction company finish the job, cutting every corner you can possibly imagine.
And this quote, this is just chilling. In the aftermath, with over 500 people dead, Lee Jun said this during his interrogation. His main concern was the financial damage to his company. It's a statement that just shows this shocking lack of remorse, and it really perfectly captures the corporate greed that was the real foundation of this building.
The collapse was a national trauma. I mean, it sent absolute shockwaves through South Korean society. The public was outraged, and they demanded accountability. And more importantly, they demanded real, fundamental change.
And, well, some accountability did happen. Lee Jun was convicted and got 7.5 years. His son, who was the CEO, got 7. But what's really crucial here is that several city officials who took bribes to approve all these dangerous changes were also convicted and jailed. That exposed the deep-seated corruption that really allowed this disaster to happen in the first place.
And so, ultimately, the legacy of Sampoong was this incredibly painful but necessary catalyst for change. The whole event was so shocking that it forced a complete nationwide review of building safety regulations across South Korea. It really became a turning point, showing everyone how corruption could have lethal, real-world consequences.
The Sampoong company was completely dismantled to pay compensation to the victims' families. A memorial was built, but not at the original site. Today, a luxury apartment complex stands right where the store used to be. The disaster really left a permanent scar on the nation, serving as this constant, horrific reminder of the human cost of greed.
The story of Sampoong isn't just history. It's a vital lesson for all of us on the catastrophic price of ignoring experts and prioritizing profit over people. From that first bad blueprint to the final crack in the ceiling that everybody ignored, this was a completely avoidable tragedy, and it really forces us to ask, what warnings are being ignored today? Thanks for watching.